What do you do in your capacity with the National Hurricane Center?
So I'm the branch chief of the Hurricane Specialist Unit. So we are the unit at NHC with the 10 forecasters that are basically responsible for issuing the forecasts and warnings for all the tropical storms and hurricanes in the Atlantic and the Eastern Pacific. So I supervise that unit and help out with operations, a lot of support like briefings and aircraft scheduling and coordination and watch warning issuance, all those exciting things that happen during the hurricane season, and then off season dealing with things like policy and developing new products and training and all those things that come as part of the job.
Well, there's a lot of new things this year, right? So when does the hurricane season start in the Atlantic?
Well, the Atlantic Basin hurricane season starts officially on June 1st, but one change we've made this year is that starting on May 15th, we're going to start issuing our routine tropical weather outlook on that date rather than waiting for June 1st. And that's a product we issue every 6 hours that talks about systems that could go on and form, become tropical depressions or tropical storms during the next 5 days. We've had a lot of activity before the start of the official season in late May in the last few years, so we've decided to move up our issuance of that product to cover that potential for activity in that time of the year.
So last season was only the second one to use the Greek alphabet. How come it got replaced permanently?
Well, there were several reasons we decided to move away from the Greek alphabet. First of all, it sort of was a distraction. People became more sort of fixated on the fact that we were using Greek letters rather than looking at the impacts and the threats from the storms themselves. For some of our international partners, the Greek letters were a little difficult to pronounce, and some of the other names used in the Atlantic Basin. And some of the names actually sounded very similar. Theta, Eta, Iota, for example, occurred in close proximity to each other and were sort of difficult to differentiate. So for that reason, we replaced the use of the Greek alphabet with a regular list of supplemental, sort of regular names that we'll use if we ever exhaust the standard name list in a given year.
So you mentioned moving up the tropical weather outlooks. What other new products are available this year and how can folks access them?
Well, we don't have a lot of new sort of baseline products from the Hurricane Center this season. We still have our standard 5-day forecast, our watches and warnings. In the recent few years, we've rolled out a new storm surge watch and warning that's been in place for a few seasons. Another product that's really useful is the time of arrival of tropical storm force winds, which provides everyone with information about when could the onset of hazardous conditions start. An earliest reasonable time and a most likely time. All of that information is available at hurricanes.gov, which is the NHC webpage, and you can find more products from your local National Weather Service office at weather.gov as well.
All right, so Dr. Brennan, I know a lot of folks get fixated on the cone of uncertainty. Are there any changes to it this year? Still reliable?
Well, it's not changing much in size this year compared to 2020. The track forecast errors haven't really changed too much. So the biggest thing to emphasize about the cone is it only just tells you generally where the center of the storm is expected to go over the next 5 days. It doesn't tell you anything about the impacts. It doesn't tell you anything about where the winds or the rain or the storm surge or the tornadoes could occur. So you really can't use that as a graphic to judge whether you're at risk of a storm or not. It can give you a general idea of whether the storm might move near your area, but there's a lot more information beyond that you have to look at to see what the risks are that you might have to deal with from a given storm.
Yeah, and exactly. So I apologize if I left this out in the beginning, but I work for WJAR. We are in Providence, Rhode Island, a coastal community here. And
right.
I think we spent even a little time in the cone of uncertainty. So what should we be doing to prepare in April?
Well, you can always start by finding out, especially for people that live along the coast or near the water, do you live in a storm surge evacuation zone? You can usually find that out from your state or local emergency management office, because that means you could be asked to leave or evacuate during a hurricane event if you live in one of those flood-prone areas. So that sort of forms the basis of your preparation plan. If you know you might have to leave your house during an event, you need to figure out how you're going to leave, where you're going to go, what supplies you're going to take with you. If you're going to be able to stay in your home, you need to have that emergency supply kit ready, several days of food, water, and medicine. Find out, the people that you care for, your friends and family, what are their vulnerabilities? Do they need help getting ready for the season? Check up on your insurance and your other preparations for your home. Do all that now in April rather than waiting till June or July or August when a storm starts to threaten your area and you have to put that plan together very quickly. It's better to have all that in place and just be able to put it into action.
I guess we got fairly lucky last year. What made 2020 so active with the most named storms?
Well, it was just a relentless season. We had a lot of storms, as you noted. We had 30 named storms. A lot of them formed very close to land in the western part of the basin, but we had impacts really across the entire basin from Central America all the way up the U.S. East Coast. A tremendous number of storms in the Gulf of Mexico, storms affecting Bermuda, Atlantic Canada, the Azores, and even Portugal. So, there was just widespread activity. We had a La Nina in place in the Eastern Pacific, which sort of enhances the tropical cyclone activity we see in the Atlantic Basin. We had warm ocean waters. Just all those factors combined together to generate a really record-breaking type of a season.
Right. So now we're in 2021, and I believe the climatology has shifted, right? The average has increased.
Right. Yeah. Since we finished out a decade with 2020, we have new 30-year averages that we compute every 10 years to give us sort of the average number of storms in the basin each season. And that's gone from 12 named storms to 14, 6 hurricanes to 7, and the number of major hurricanes has stayed steady at 3. So that just reflects the sort of very busy hurricane seasons we've had, especially in the last 15 to 20 years, even going back in some cases to the mid 1990s. So, it's a more reflective number of what we're, currently seeing without just letting it be dominated by a few years in the sample.
Well, I know no individual storm can be blamed on climate change, but does that play into this a bit?
It's possible, although some of the future climate scenarios show that in a warming climate, the overall number of storms might stay the same or even go down a little bit, while the number of very intense hurricanes stays about the same. But the biggest things we see from climate change that are sort of more confident in is that sea level is rising, and that's making more areas vulnerable to storm surge and increasing the amount of storm surge that some areas could experience in a given storm. And warmer air holds more moisture. So we're more likely to see some of these very extreme rainfall events that we've seen in hurricanes in the past few years. And those are likely to continue. And that, again, increases the risk of flooding from rainfall-induced flooding, in addition to the increased risk from storm surge.
I know it's early. I don't think your 2021 forecast is out yet, but do you have any general ideas of how this season might shape up?
Well, yeah, NOAA's seasonal forecast comes out in May, but I think one of the big factors we always look at is what's the El Nino La Nina situation look like in the Pacific. And while we're likely to come out of La Nina sometime later this year, it looks unlikely that we'll be in an El Nino situation during the hurricane season, which is unfortunately not great news for the Atlantic, because El Nino tends to suppress tropical cyclone formation in the Atlantic basin. So, we've had a pattern of very busy years in the last several seasons. We saw almost the entire U.S. coastline from Texas to Maine be affected by a storm in some way, shape, or form last year. So everybody has to prepare every year as if they're going to be affected where they live and get that plan into place.
Cool. Well, I know you got to run in a second. Is there anything else you want to quickly add that people should know?
I think we've covered it. Again, just have that plan in place before the season starts and know your risk. Those are the two biggest things.
All right, Dr. Brendan, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.